let's move on, because I know that there's a touchy subject going around, another priest touchy subject that we still haven't gotten to. And this is dealing with the way that sacrifice works. And as far as a follower is concerned, how does sacrifice work for us? We sacrifice we put a rare item into an altar, and we sacrifice it, and then we get 100% food and water and 100% nutrition. But this is not what they're talking about. They want to make sacrifice changes to priests only. And as far as what Adam's telling me, what you're telling me is that they proposed a change to the way sacrificing works.
Yes.
Let's do this a little differently. Okay. At some point, the devs probably said, something is wrong. We need to solve something with priests. And let's see if we can solve this through sacrificing.
Right.
And
now,
like
I'll
that,
be honest,
this is.
I am not sure at all what it is they're trying to solve. They have said on the forum that, like, some issues, like they listed some things they want to address. Although my feeling is that their proposed solution actually doesn't really address it, and so it left me feeling like there's some hidden agenda, like there's something that they're trying to fix, and they're trying to do it with this weird system. But as people point out in the thread, there's like a really easy fix for it if you want to address those things without this weird system. So let's go back up a bit, because let's discuss
so
what it is that they're trying to change.
Are the devs proposing? No, sorry. What are the devs proposing that they're trying to fix? Let's go with that.
I kind of want to go back a little bit, even more,
Okay.
to people who don't know anything about priests or sacrificing or anything. So the current way things work is that you could put an item, certain items are better than others, into an altar and sacrifice it, and as a priest, that will give you an instant favor bump. So like mana, like you'll get mana basically for that sacrifice. And people would sacrifice and then use that favor to cast, and then repeat that process. Sacrifice again, cast, sacrifice, cast. Like that's the general thing. Now,
like any
sacrifice,
item.
Like any
you sacrifice any item, and then you get some sort of favor boost.
That is true. Any item will give you a favor boost.
That can fit into an altar.
Most items, yeah, it has to fit in an altar. Most items will give you a very, very, very tiny boost, and there's certain items that give you more. Okay, so I don't know if we want to go into the whole system there.
No, that's good enough. Does anybody want to hear how that works? I mean, more than that.
I could go on for another 10 minutes about the details of that, but the idea is there are certain items in this game that you can sacrifice, and it gives you a decent amount of favor. Like one of the items is cordage rope. Cordage rope is considered one of the better items, and so they even made a boost to it. So it's like a 70 quality cordage rope. Somebody might be able to tell me the number now, but back when I was sacrificing way back in the day, a 70 quality cordage rope gave you 10 favor. I think it's more now. It might be 17 favor. I don't know. So that's pretty good, I'd say. Considering you only need like 50 favor to cast something. It's like 20 to 25 now. Oh my God. It's like they made it easy mode. It's insane. I have a BSB with like 3,070 quality cordage ropes. Anyway, so that's the way that it worked before. You would sacrifice. Sacrifice would be a 30-second cast, and then you would cast your WOA, which is 20-second cast. So your cycle is 50 seconds. Every 50 seconds, you can do a cast on something. And what they said in the post right away is we want to make these changes because we feel that priests are spending most of their time sacrificing, and they want to minimize or lower the amount of time that priests are sacrificing and increase the amount of time that they get to cast.
So let me put that in a way that that I can understand. So they want to make the gameplay of priests more fun.
More
Is that essentially what they're saying? We think that they're doing boring stuff like sacrificing a lot and spending a lot of time doing that.
Yep.
Let's fix that and make priesting more fun by making them be able to cast more often.
Right.
Than sack. So now that we got that out of the way, what are they trying to do to make them more fun?
Yeah, so this is what they propose. They propose that when you sacrifice something, it doesn't give you an instant favor boost or favor. What it will do is give you kind of like a buff that will increase your favor regen by a certain amount, depending on how much you sacrifice. And furthermore, they made it so that you could sacrifice much more than the 100 that would cap you out. So you can sacrifice, let's say, 300, enough to get 300 favor, and that 300 favor will sort of come at you over time. So you can cast and then regen and cast and regen like that.
So they want to make it a buff. So you sacrifice
kind of
all
like,
of this favor. That favor gets pooled into a buff, and then you get that buff over time.
Over time, exactly.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, my initial gut instinct was, but then after every cast, you're going to have to still wait, right? Ticks happen every, 10 seconds? 8 seconds? I guess it depends on server lag, but somewhere in there, like every 10 seconds, you get a tick, a regen tick. And I can't imagine they're going to make it so that you get 50 in one tick. Like you probably get like an extra 10 or something like that. So you might end up having to wait 5 ticks before you can cast again, or maybe 3 ticks, whatever. Let's say it's 3 ticks. You have to wait 3 ticks before you can cast again. Well, that 3 ticks is going to take 30 seconds. So now all of a sudden you're casting, and now instead of sacrificing, you're waiting 30 seconds and then casting, and then waiting and then casting, and then you're going to have to sacrifice followed by waiting again. Right?
So
like to me, it feels like it's going to increase.
Putting it back in the the context of what I think they're trying to do, which is trying to make priests more fun.
I feel like, just to save you time, I don't think we need to dig that one, because I don't think we want to go any lower than this.
Okay.
Corner.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like.
So, you're right.
Otherwise, we'll be here.
Let's place
forever.
it back. So.
Let's do this one.
So what they did to make it more fun is, instead of performing the action of sacrificing, you're saying they replace that with doing nothing.
Yeah. With waiting.
So they're fun. The way to make priests more engaging is to do nothing. I would also say, though, that then, because one thing that that this could potentially do that we're not seeing is make it so priests are viable without needing to stand next to an altar. Does this change do that?
I don't,
because that could make things more fun, right? Because then you do your altar thing, and then you're off, and you got your favor gain somewhere else in the world,
like the
for a long time.
Like the priest who's doing this is going to hunker down and get to their grind, like casting, like they're setting up for a casting session. So here's all my tools in this like storage. I'm going to pull out a tool and cast on it, put it back. Like, where are you going to go if that's what your goal is? Like, you might be able to run over here to get some drink of water, and then you'll have to run back to the tool place, and you're still going to have to sacrifice every maybe 5 or 6 casts or whatever. So.
And Mr. Sorry, a portable altar, that is a good idea, but and that might make priests more fun. I've not, Adam, you would have to answer that, but I don't know. I don't know if that doesn't solve the problem that they're trying to solve, I guess.
I think you can load altars now.
I guess that's true.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is they're trying to solve here. Like, is it to increase the amount of casts that you could do? You know, like, make it so that you can pump out 50 casts instead of before 30 casts in the same amount of time. But you can't load altars, you can just push them and pull them, is that it?
Yeah, before they weren't even movable. Like you couldn't even.
Right. Yeah, before they
At
were
least the
even
gold
movable,
and
that's
silver ones.
just- yeah, that's just push pull place. Just
Anyway,
to go back
so
on the
yeah, so this is
increasing the-
their
if
solution,
their
I
goal
guess.
if their goal is to increase casts per hour, like how many casts I can pump out, I am not in favor of that change. I really don't think priests need to increase the amount of casts we can do, because as it is, we all know how the old servers are. We're going to get to a point where there is way too many casted items than anybody possibly could use. Like, it's going to get to that point, and it's not going to take that long, in my opinion, based on the way things are going now. So just speeding that up. It's like we're speeding it up to get to the end game faster. That's all.
Okay, so here's my problem with that, because you're looking at it from almost like a min-maxing type of scenario,
More like
or
a
like
server balancing.
server balancing. So let's look at that issue, because you're
but
saying
also game balancing. Like what would this game be like if I could get to 90 in any skill I want by tomorrow? Like
but this change wouldn't do that.
I'm making it extreme, because what this change would, if they're going to make it so you can pump out casts faster, it just means you're going to get to the end faster. And is that what we want? Like, do we want to be able to get to the end faster?
Well, this is the same exact argument as, or a debate over faster action timers.
But whenever we discuss that, we always balance that with slower skill gain, right?
Yeah.
Like
so
double the action timers, half the skill gain, right?
Apply that logic now to channeling gain.
Okay, so you could make it faster casting, but make it that it's way harder to land higher casts. That's a possibility.
Or just takes just as long to level up channel grinding or whatever, even though you're doing more. Even though you're doing more casts.
I'm not even talking about leveling up channeling. I'm talking about, what if the players already have high channeling, right? They're channeling in the 90s, because that's going to happen soon. There's going to be people with 90 channeling very soon. And you now double the rate at which they can pump out
Okay, so then apply the logic to what you were saying. You can do more casts, but make it harder to get higher casts.
Harder to make higher casts? I wouldn't
be
against that. I mean, anybody who
we have
knows
the same amount of higher casts as we did before, but we have the priests don't sit around and like just wait more and do less casts. They have the ability to do more.
I'd be okay with that. However, a lot of people won't be, because as it is, if anybody's done casting before, getting a high cast is super painful. Like, even I did a stream a while ago, probably find it, where I'm like, I have this rare pickaxe and my goal is to get 90 casts WA, 90 casts COC on it. And I have my 94.5 channeling priest with just unlimited favor sitting there, and I'm just going at it with all the buffs I can get. And I'm just casting away, and getting 90 is not as easy as it sounds, even under those circumstances. So
there's a few different ways that we can get rid of that. I don't want to bring it up because it's off topic. The idea of cast imping, the idea of changing the way that priests function to make them more fun and interactive, but still have the same sort of abilities and bonus and the ability on what they can do in the game, to just sort of make them more fun, but still give them the same bonuses and that sort of thing that they have. But really, what we would want to talk about is more about the priesting and the sacrificing changes that they're making, and why they're making them. What I would say is this: Thank you so much, Bone Carver, for the follow.
Thanks for the follow. Yeah.
How can I word this? Okay, let's go to some of you guys. What are you guys thinking? Are you reading the comments here?
They need to find a way to grind channeling better with spells that don't have a permanent effect, right? I mean, as it is already, some of the better ways of grinding channeling don't have a permanent effect. Like, I mean, the way I grinded channeling was using Vessel, and that worked pretty good. And that has no permanent effect.
So we're looking specifically at the changes they're trying to make to sacrificing to pool their favor or to regen priest's favor.
I'll be honest, I don't even know what their intention is. Like, what are they trying to achieve with this?
I think it all comes down to one thing. We're all looking at it from a lens of this is how priests are. They have... How many spells does a priest have?
30 or 40 or something like that?
I'm like 40 spells, something like that. How many spells are deemed like the spells that a priest should... that you go to the priest to cast? How many spells are very, very useful for a priest?
On PvE?
On PvE. Let's stick
Depends
to
on
what we know.
Priest, but I would say, like, if you're mag, it would be 3, and if you're foe, it would be maybe 7, and if it's Vin, it might be 4 or 5, something like that.
A handful is what you're basically telling me.
Handful. Yeah, on PvE.
So if both of these things, which really what I think they're trying to do is make priests more interactive or fun to play, shouldn't the solution really be trying to create more progression and by adding more abilities that priests are actually useful in the game to give them more of an appeal? The way that you would have to do that is to give them more variety of things to do. And you're talking like a handful of things. We do all of this stuff. Priests in general, we were doing all of these grinding of channeling, grinding of favor, and sermons and praying and all this stuff for like a handful of useful abilities on the PvE server.
Right.
And so they can go through all of these things, whatever they want to do, change the way that sacking works, say change the way regenning works, change the way that linking works, but it doesn't change the types of players that are willing to go through all of this to get their priesting up. It's not more fun, either of these options that they're doing. The only way to make priests...
Hey, Deathwind, how's it going?
Hey,
Didn't see
Deathwind.
you drop in there, yeah. Like, you were saying something yesterday to me about this, and I think Sipaku's saying the same thing. It's that the Wurm dev team has to first figure out their overall vision for priests. Like, they have to come up with like the end result of the whole thing first.
Yeah, what is the vision of priests in the land of Wurm? What is it now?
Right.
So we know what priesting is in the game right now. If you had to describe, what is the vision of priesting in Wurm Online right now? What is it?
I mean, it seems like it's more of a...
through a PvE lens.
Through a PvE lens. I want to be dead honest here. I really feel like the way that this game has been designed, it's been designed so that priests force people to pay premium on alts. Like, that was the fundamental piece to it all. It's like, give these characters the ability to do all these fun things that they would want to do, however, limit them so that they force them to make it an alt. And that's, I think, by design. I think that all it really is trying to enhance gameplay, like give people a reason to play these alts so that people pay more premium, and that's a fair. I think it's fair to say, because I mean that's a good business move by the video game developers. I really feel like it's not terrible of them to do that. But like honestly, I don't know if they have an overall vision in terms of like immersion or anything like that.
I mean, we'd have to go through, let's say, a design change and then propose what would that do to the game and the players in general right now. And like the question really is like, okay, let's say they changed priests. Everybody can be a priest if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you can, right? You still got to go through the grind. You still got to go through the changes. And let's say we don't change much about the way priests work. Would that stop people? And thank you so much for the follow, Tick Rated. Would that stop people from creating alts to make priests?
Right, like, and Cortina is saying the same kind of thing. Like, and the answer is yes. I think if they made it so that priests restrictions, is this what you're talking about? Priest restrictions?
Yeah, let's get rid of the priest restrictions.
Right.
Anybody could be a priest, and magic becomes more prevalent.
Yeah, what's going to end up happening is right away you're going to lose about 500 subs or more.
You think so?
Happen to the game? Oh yeah, easy. The game will lose like a lot of money if they make that change, because people would they would just priest their main, and then they wouldn't have a need for a priest alt.
Or would they main their priest?
That's what I mean. They would main their priest or priest their main, one or the other. You would.
But there's still the option of needing alts.
It's an option, but it's a less desirable option now that if your priest can do everything. Right now, it's more desirable. Like that's why you see it so prevalently.
But think about this. You're saying this like, yeah, that's what they do. But let's really take a step back on how priests work.
Okay.
And see if this, as a priest, you would do this. Okay. Your main is a miner. Your main is a blacksmith. You're going to do mining. You're going to do blacksmithing. You're going to do all this stuff. Now I tell you, you can also be a priest. Now, you know what it takes to level a priest. To level a priest, you have to do channel grinding. You have to do all this stuff. You have to be at an altar. You have to do all this stuff. Would you want to combine that into one character? Because you would not be able to level up blacksmithing as fast. You now would not be able to level up priesting as fast.
Here's what I would do.
Characters would be better.
Here's what I would do. So let's say, like now, we're in a perfect position for me to demonstrate this, right? Like we're about to think about priesting, right? And you want me to go faux.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's say I do that. Let's say I get a faux priest, right? Then I would also want to get another alt, because in order to cast Life Transfer, you need 100 favor. And the only way to do that at the beginning is to have two priests linking up. Okay, so that's what I would do. I would premium up a main priest, and I would premium up an alt priest so that I can link to do those casts. Now, if they made the change that my main can now be a priest, I wouldn't need to make that second alt. I would just use my main as the alt battery. And then the battery could do like making the favor and all that stuff like that while the main casts, and I wouldn't need that third character.
You would need the third character. So now you're saying you would go from 3 characters to 2 if 3
to 2, right? And that's probably the ratio that you would see people like the premium drop off. You would go for every 3 characters, you would lose 1, essentially.
Because I mean, if we're combining characters, like typical you're saying here, wait 2 years and you have all these people with everything. But what that would do is, so instead of 2 characters or 3 characters, that would be able to obtain 95 blacksmithing and 95 mining and 95 like channeling, all that stuff. You would reduce that to 1 character, and then that character now, to get to the 95 of all those things, take much longer, like more years to accomplish that, because you can only do one thing at a time, whereas before you were doing both at the same time. So now the grind, it's almost doubled to do these things. And so you wouldn't see one character with all three of those as fast as you would see two characters with all three of those, or with a mixture of those three. And wouldn't that prolong what you're doing in the game? Wouldn't that prolong the amount of time that you would spend in the game long term? So if we're looking long term, that would actually help the game, because people would stick around longer in this. Like if their plan was to with less tunes. Right. So if you're so I'm not thinking short term here, typical. I'm thinking long term. And then now you're going, okay, we're going to lose subs, but these players are going to play longer in theory. Then the amount of money that the game loses or gains could potentially just be the same longer term. Right, because
you'll probably still alt freeze for random casting, but you probably wouldn't need to have a battery as well, a separate. Anyway, I don't know. And typical brings up the point about the market, and that's another issue that we haven't even put on the table.
Yeah, there would be lots of side effects to these things that the devs and the players wouldn't know what would happen if this it would take a very long time. And this is why once they make a change like this and it goes through its motions and the players are playing and they're seeing what the changes are, that's when you come into the situation where they find a mechanic that's perfectly fine and they deem it, oh, this is actually game balancing, and they cast it off as an exploit, and then players get mad. And this is why we get into these situations like we were talking about earlier in the stream. Right. Like, it was not an exploit, and then we make a change, and then we kind of spend a few years seeing how it goes through the game and how it functions, and then we're kind of like, oh crap, this is not good for the game. And it could be a side effect or whatever. Anyway, that's why stuff like this happens. Like we're wanting change, and in the end, we're wanting a couple things. We're wanting players. Actually, we're not even wanting a couple things. Like as a dev team or even as players, we want more players to play, and we want more of them to enjoy their time, so that they spend longer time to play. That's what we want.
Like, we've always come from that perspective. Like we've never really tried to, like, any time that we come across one of these things, we would report it as opposed to try to use it to our advantage, usually, because we know how it will affect the game in the long run, and we honestly and truly want to see this game succeed. And that's the main reason why we stream, is that we want to spread the word about this game and get more people playing it. So when I see some change that happens that I think is going to detriment the game in the long run, like that really sets my alarm bells going.